Hello everybody. This is going to be a recording of a watercolor painting of a frog that my husband took a picture of from our backyard. So I am going to paint this with a reflection, and I'm just going to have a black background. So I've already started just a tad bit, but I'm just using, I use Holbein watercolors. And so I am just going to start the first layer of the background. It will take several layers to get it a nice mirrored dark color. Just being careful going around the edges. And I'm using some neutral tint, and I am using some carbon black. Normally I just mix my own, but with those two mixed together, it's not really a flat color. It is a pretty color, so I don't mind using that black. Just concentrating as I'm getting around these edges. This is an 11 by 14 paper, and it is Saunders Waterford, which is one of my favorite watercolor papers. I've heard some that use it don't care for it, but I've tried many, from the most expensive to, in between and least expensive, and this is one of my favorites. This and New York Central Supply, I think, are probably my favorites. And like I said, this will be several layers to get it to the nice dark mirrored image that I want the background to be. And I'm just going to let that dry. And this is I'm not sure how to say it, Bialk brush, and I really like these brushes. I got them on Amazon, and they work really good for the washes in the back. And then these are Holbein Gold, which are really nice. So now I'm just going to get a little bit of that surface right under the frog. I think I'm going to start, let this kind of dry and I'll go in and start some of the green. Just adding a little bit and softening it with water towards those edges. So this frog, has a really nice mixture of cool and warm greens all mixed together. It's very, very interesting coloring. And his eye is closed. I guess he was taking a little nap. So this, even though I'm using some white gouache, it's still transparent enough that I can see my sketching underneath. I'm not using a lot of the white gouache, so. Kind of getting a base layer down. At this point, I'm not trying to be too specific, just trying to kind of block in the color patterns. all up under on his throat here. It's very cool. Which I'm just using a mixture of the emerald green and a little bit of white gouache. And then I want to imitate, same thing, because this is the reflection down here. So we don't want exact, but we want a close, because it is supposed to be a reflection, so it's not going to be as vibrant. Get a little, this, tone that down just a bit. It's a little too, yeah, that's better. Just added a little, what was left from my palette of, it's some raw sienna and some transparent orange and probably a little bit of burnt umber. Just kind of mix that into that green mixture and warm it up a little, tone it down a little. And again, we're just blocking in, and we will fix the shapes when we do more on the background. Not using a lot of pigment, just an underpainting. So I don't want to completely cover the initial color that I laid down, but now we're just kind of, it's not going to take long for that to dry because it's a pretty thin consistency that I'm using. So just going to add another layer to this cooler green here. Just kind of go back and forth between the cooler and the warmer green with the more yellow in it. And I did draw a pretty detailed pattern, but since that was just to help guide me, and you know, I knew I wouldn't stick to that exactly, but just to help guide the where the colors as a pattern for my where the colors go, the cooler and the darker, and the more warm, I should say. Frogs have such a intricate pattern to their skin. It's just all about layering and just using the very tip of my brush, just barely touching the surface of the paper. Going to use a little burnt umber. Just mix it with that green gold there. Deepen a few of these. constantly checking the reference photo just to kind of guide me for the patterns that are on his skin. And this is where that I can still see the sketch that I put on here. So that also is helping guide me for some of these patterns. Of course, it's impossible to get it exact, but it definitely helps get a good likeness of where the patterns should be. And he does have, so his eye is right here, and it looks like it's somewhat closed, and then he has a large area right here, which I initially thought was his eye, but so I don't know what that area is called because it looks like it's a significant feature, but I'll have to look it up and see exactly what that is. But let's go ahead and get his eye started. And I'll go ahead and get this other feature on his anatomy started. It reminds me of like a knot in a tree. That's what it kind of looks like. And I think this is a tree frog, so I'm assuming it's probably some camouflage protective thing that the frogs have. Just using the tip of my brush to kind of lightly do a bit of a zigzaggy pattern. And when we initially kind of blocked in our colors, that is helpful to know also, because this is like the top of him, and this is like the side of his belly, and then he's got his legs folded. And depending on the pressure that you use on your brush, of course, determines the variation in your marks that you're making. And we will go back and do more layers on that. I'm going to use like indigo and some neutral tint combined. So it's not such a flat, boring black color. I usually just mix and make my own black. It's more times than not, it's just a pretty color. Every now and then you need just the black, but for the most part, you can mix your colors and get such much prettier color. And plus, by getting some of these darks in here, now it's going to help me determine the colors of the rest of him or her. Just using a very light touch. This is probably dry enough that my color's not going to run everywhere now. Going to get some burnt sienna and just a little bit of the white gouache. Makes a really pretty pinkish brown color. It is more opaque because I did use the white gouache, but it's such a pretty color. And in the reference photo, that looks pretty much like what that color is. So I'm just using a light touch so I don't get it too opaque. I'm going to use a smaller brush now and get some of that dark indigo. While that burnt sienna white gouache is still wet enough, I want to get this to move around just a little bit in the water. Now I want to get a lighter blue. It's got a little bit of a lighter, almost a turquoisey, but it's not quite a turquoise blue. It's cerulean blue would be good. He does have some turquoise, or some teal. Down in here. Just gonna loosen that up with some water. lift a little bit of that. I add a little more to this, add another layer, deepen that color in some areas. Almost like a glaze. Frogs have noses, I guess, and this kind of, to me, looks like it's a nose, but I'm not real sure. I guess I need to brush up on my frog anatomy. Actually, the first time I've ever painted a frog, so I really like it's like putting a puzzle together almost. You just kind of find patterns, and of course, there's absolutely no way to get it exact, and you wouldn't want to be exact. But just a good representation and something trying kind of guiding me in all of the intricate little patterns that they can have. That's why the underpainting is important at first, so you can get the variation of the different greens that it has, and then we can go back over the top of that and start adding our intricate patterns and here's his mouth here. So that will be a very thin but definite line. varying the pressure I'm using on the brush to get different marks that so they don't all look so uniform and like it's a pattern. Kind of helps you paint a little bit looser, even though we're being very detailed. It's still not, it's still a bit of a loose painting because you need to make random marks. So you do have to be a little bit looser. Kind of what helps me is just to kind of do a fast, don't think about it too much. Just let your hand be a little loose and make a few, just kind of get in there and let your hand do what it wants to do. Darkening up some of the marks.